educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a wonderful guest today. He is the founder and CEO of Double Dare, an executive coaching and consulting practice which dares entrepreneurs and executives to fully live their unique talent, passion, and purpose. Since 1982, he has managed closely held family businesses, launched 4 for-profit businesses and sold them, and 2 not-for-profit organizations. He received his undergraduate degree from Brown University. He graduated from University of Nebraska at Omaha, summa cum laude, with a master's degree in clinical counseling, and is a licensed mental health therapist. He is also certified as an executive coach by the Coaches Training Institute and the International Coach Federation. I thank y'all very much for coming on to the show today, listening today, and I hope that you understand what it means to set goals. So I would like for you to understand where we're looking towards to our end goal or our outcome for this particular episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. And Scott, thank you for joining me today.
Maurice, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Sure, Scott. So thank you very much for sharing your talent, your information with us. So let me ask a question. As I just said about goal setting, right? So what does it mean to set goals? We hear a lot of different versions or definitions. So what does it mean to set goals?
You know, one of the things about goal setting is that for most people, it's the most intimidating and kind of discouraging and defeating thing that we do. I mean, it's meant to be uplifting and wonderful, but so often when we set goals, we kind of get that feeling in the pit of my stomach, that says, oh boy, I hope I can do this. Or even worse, we set the goals too low and they're not. So to me, goal setting has everything to do with working with another person, actually, to give you the perspective to know, am I shooting high enough? Am I shooting too low? And more than anything else, am I biting off too much, which is where people tend to get discouraged and give up.
So sometimes people say, hey, if you set goals and you're not fearful enough, they're not strong enough. So,
Right.
and so what you're talking about being intimidated by them, and maybe we procrastinate, maybe we set them off to the side. How do we overcome that moniker, that idea that if they're not strong enough and we're not afraid enough, that they're not big enough or whatever it is? So how do we overcome something like that?
Well, again, I think one of the ways is to have a trusted, friend, advisor, person in your life that can kind of give you that perspective and say just what you said, that it needs to be beyond your grasp or what's a heaven for. I mean, we do need to have something that makes us stretch for sure. But on the other hand, the danger in that is getting discouraged or getting overwhelmed. And so, one of the 2 things that have really worked for our clients, one of them is to really chunk it down into the smallest possible goals you can, or sub goals or sub goals. And with most of our clients, for example, we start out with annual goals that are really awe-inspiring, but we chunk it down to quarterly goals, to monthly goals, and to weekly goals, because most people can do anything and everything on their weekly goal list. There isn't anything that they can't do. When you get it down to a small enough piece, most people feel pretty confident. It lets them sneak under that confidence radar. They know that they can hold their breath for a while and get through this thing. The purpose for the long-term goal, of course, is to inspire them to keep moving. But we intentionally try to chunk it down into the most achievable size goals possible, because if we can't achieve the short-term goals, we can't achieve the long-term goals.
So there's a term that, as we talked in the green room, about goal shredding. What is that?
Right.
What does goal shredding mean?
Well, actually, I've got to give one of my coaches the credit for this,
Okay.
but I came to her one year in December with 25 goals, and she said, "Boy, this is wonderful, but it feels like, it'd be enough for 50 people to get done.
Hmm.
Um, let's try to pare this down. If we're celebrating this on New Year's Eve of the following year,
Mm-hmm.
what are the things that we really truly want to be celebrating and
Hmm.
and thank our coach, thank our team, and thank God for getting done. And what she forced me to do was to really identify the goals that were really truly going to move the world for me and hopefully
Hmm.
for others. And what I discovered was that goal shredding is actually more productive and useful than
Hmm.
goal setting. You can always add more goals on top. The problem with having too many is that it dilutes our efforts and fragments our energy to the
Mm-hmm.
point where sometimes we get nothing done.
Hmm.
This is one of the beauties of chunking it down to 90 days to 30 days and to a week, so that you can really focus on, or to a day or to a morning. How do we
Hmm.
crush this morning?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's something that most people can do. When we think about climbing Everest, it's most people lose their breath pretty fast.
Right.
But if we think about finding Everest on a map this morning, that I can do.
Right. Right.
So that's sort of the idea, is that we love the entrepreneurs especially love the idea of more and more and more and more and more, but
Mm-hmm.
less is usually, when you take stock at the end of the year and what you achieved,
Mm-hmm.
less is almost always more.
So you talked about finding something that's going to help you or make you feel as though you're going to move the world for you, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, sometimes our circle, our environment, influences us or encourages us to go into another direction. So, and they say, hey, you know what? You can get rich quick here versus there, or something that you're really involved in. So how would you encourage someone to not get involved in that, to really pay attention to what they're interested in and what moves the world for them?
Well, one of the first things that we do with all of our clients, and
Mm-hmm.
that I found so useful myself, is to do a pretty in-depth values assessment
Mm-hmm.
to really understand. And I'm not really speaking so much of like moral values,
Right.
because
Right.
my clients are very moral, good people.
Right.
It's
Right.
not that. But by values, I mean the things that they value in life that
Mm-hmm.
really make them light up. And um, and I start most folks with a list of 200 values type words that we
Mm-hmm.
whittle down to 20, that we whittle down to 10, to 6, and to 3. And the objective here is to try to come up with some values that are really true north, and that will survive fads that come and go,
Mm-hmm.
different
Mm-hmm.
ways, for example, to make $1 million. But that hopefully have to do with more to do with what is your true north, what gives you joy on a daily basis, because we'll all have to kind of suck it up and do our best and work hard. But
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't give us joy, or a minimum gives us fulfillment on a daily basis, then it's going to be hard to get done. So we start with values,
Right. Okay.
and that really
Okay.
helps with the whole goal setting process, so that you've got some kind of a GPS to tell you,
Hmm.
am I moving in the right direction? And am I moving in a direction that I want my life to be about?
Mm-hmm.
Not just the next 9 months about, or survival to be about, which is obviously we all
Hmm.
have that.
Right.
But
Right.
how can we do this in a way that's in alignment with what we really value?
So when we talk about value, some of us may or may not understand what that means. What we truly value. Like you said, you don't really want to touch morals per se. That's
Right.
contingent on other things.
Exactly.
But when we talk about value, because sometimes we don't even value ourselves. You know,
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
how will we understand how to set goals based on our values, especially if we don't value ourselves?
Yeah, and this is where it really helps to work with somebody else, a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
advisor, or a coach, a mentor, a friend of some kind, because this can be work that a lot of us have overlooked kind of intentionally for a long time. because it does raise the question, yeah, well, what if I'm nobody? What if I'm,
Right.
what if I don't really have it inside to do these things? And lurking inside every single one of us, I think, is that fear. And and it's one of the things that makes this values work difficult to do alone. In fact, it can be impossible. So this is why I encourage to find someone you trust, and not necessarily an executive coach, but find someone you trust enough to really say, I want to do these exalted things, but I'm afraid that I'm insufficient, to put it mildly. And most of us have thoughts in our minds that are way more negative than I'm not enough,
Right.
And that's really, if we can get down to that, and I really work on that with most of my clients, to really face that voice that says, most people have a voice inside that says, I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough.
Right.
I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not creative enough. But almost all of us have that voice. And, we go through a process intentionally that at the very, very beginning, because if we don't get past that voice, it's going to be really hard. It's like driving with your foot on the gas and the brake.
So as I'm listening to you speak, there are some of us that deals with this phrase or this idea of imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
So can you explain what that is and how this goes with what we're talking about right now?
Sure. So, I think everybody has a little bit of an imposter syndrome, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's this voice that says, maybe I'm not all that.
Right.
And if, it can be turned to a positive, it can help us think, maybe I'm not all that. So maybe I have to develop more skills, or I have to work harder, or I have to kind of evolve as a person. It's not all negative. But when it reaches the point of paralysis, that's imposter syndrome. And so, I was talking to a gentleman the other day that I do a lot of work with veterans. I was talking to a guy who is just an amazing guy. First in his class in high school, in college, in graduate school. He went to the language school that I think the CIA has in California. He learned Chinese. He's first in his class in Chinese. He's tried to be a Navy SEAL.
Okay.
Once, and he had some kind of a COVID reaction and he washed out.
Okay.
But he's thinking to himself, I'm just a complete fraud. Now, this is a guy by any standard that is just amazing, but things have come easily for him. And so he kind of feels like, what, maybe I kind of, I don't know, conned my way into being first in my class in all these things. Maybe I was lucky. Maybe I was at the right place at the right time. Maybe I knew the right people. And what most of us tend to do, and this guy's an extreme example, but what most of us tend to do is to discount the things that we're good at.
Yes.
Because we're good at them. And we think, well, if I'm good at it and it's easy, it must not be worth very much. And we begin to think, sooner or later, someone's going to find out that they're going to pull back the curtain,
right,
revealing me as a complete fraud. And it can be really terrifying. And in this guy's instance, it can be paralyzing, even though all the evidence in the world suggests this guy's the real deal.
Right.
And we're on our way, the real deal. It's just that we tend to discount the things that we do well, and that some of the things where we have a kind of a miniature genius for, because it comes more easily than it does for other people. And so if we're successful, we tend to think, well, I must have bluffed my way into this, or I must have been it must have been coincidence. And in a way, it's a healthier point of view than, I forget the term for the opposite of imposter syndrome, but this is the person who doesn't realize they don't realize they're not all that.
Right.
We've got some politicians like this.
Right.
Think that they're all that and aren't, but can't see it.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of that. And so it can be kind of a healthy thing, except you really need someone to work through it to give you the perspective, because in the echo chamber of our own minds, we can get paralyzed in this loop of, I'm a fraud. I'm not really all that. I don't really have any talent. I was lucky to be where I am. And luck is a part of everybody's story. But so that's the answer. I think, to what imposter syndrome is. And the answer is really to be willing to talk to other people about it, and to get some objective feedback.
So I think in this process too that we lose our uniqueness, our
Yeah,
our authentic self,
right.
and because we're so caught up in what the other person is doing. We see
Exactly.
success in another form. Why can't we duplicate that? Why can't I be in that position?
Right.
So I think um, in that we don't understand, as we keep talking about value, we have value in being different from any and everybody else. We have value
Exactly.
in our company not looking at like someone else. We have value in our podcast not looking like everyone else. So
Exactly.
so so as you are talking to your clients, what's the one thing, or how do you encourage them to continue to stay in their authentic self?
That's such a great question. And social media has put us in a position where we sort of think there's a way to succeed. There's a way to lead. There's a way to be that's that I need to follow.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
of course, there's no one looks bad on social media unless the
Right.
paparazzi get video of you. I mean, there's nobody in their right mind who puts up their worst self in social media.
No.
And sometimes we forget that and think,
Hmm.
wow, everybody's got it together but me. And number one, and number two, there's a way to do this.
Hmm.
But what the
Hmm.
world wants is not what they already have. They want something new. You know,
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
want the thing that they've never seen before. They want you, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and that's really takes a lot of guts
Hmm.
to be ourselves. But that's really what the world is ravenous for.
Right.
Is they've already heard. I don't know. I don't like Joe Rogan, but I've already heard Joe Rogan, right?
Right. Right.
And so to be another Joe Rogan, the world doesn't need another one. Probably doesn't need the first one, but it doesn't need any more, right? And so we have to take this risk of being ourselves, but that's what the world wants.
Right.
It doesn't know it yet, but what it really wants is the thing it doesn't have yet. And that's why we're here, I think, as
Hmm.
people, is to be that whatever it is. But it takes lots of guts, and particularly in the face of social media,
Right.
uh, because the illusion is I have to be wonderful, or I have to be
Hmm.
like her, or I have to be like
Hmm.
him to be successful. And that I think the world is just crying out for people to be real, not to be popular necessarily.
So I think sometimes I know in my own spaces of corporate America, I heard some managers talking about be like me. Why can't you be like this person over here?
Yeah,
In order
yeah,
for you to move up within an organization, and so that copycat idea, we come
exactly.
across it a lot.
Oh
So
yeah,
I think that's part of the challenge. We hear that, and that we feel that that's the only way we can grow within an
yeah,
organization or our company.
exactly, exactly. And I mean, enlightened companies, we use a technology called predictive index
Hmm.
to understand how people what their preferred style is in going to work. And predictive index has been chopping this up all the data for years and years. And one of
Hmm.
the things that they have recognized is that the corporate cultures, or the work teams that are the most successful, are those that are the most diverse, not
Hmm.
just racially diverse, of course, racially diverse, not just gender diverse, of course,
Hmm.
that, but more than that, styles of thinking diverse.
Hmm.
And the companies that are the most robust, and kind of an overused words, but the ones that kind of achieve the most are the ones that have the most diverse blend of people.
Hmm.
And when you put a group of diverse people together, there's conflict and there's some things that happen, but there's also the chance for something to happen that's never happened before. Whereas, as you say, if we all behave like the leader
Right.
and get into groupthink, we're never going to do anything very wonderful.
Hmm. So you have this thing on your website. It's called misaligned leadership, right?
Yes.
Organizational problems that impede growth. So as we talking about this copycat idea, sometimes that leadership piece, we're not sure exactly if that person is leading us in the direction, right direction. We hear this because we want growth, we want money, we want status, whatever it is. So how do we determine what leadership we should be following
Yeah.
in any
Oh boy.
situation?
That's a great question because we're human,
Right.
and if our ambition is being fulfilled and our financial security is being fulfilled and our egos are being fulfilled,
Hmm.
that's a siren song that a lot of us have followed leaders over the cliff,
Right.
uh, you know, but I mean, it's totally understandable. Of course, we're just human.
Right.
And, and sometimes I think maybe you have to do that once to realize how dangerous it is.
Hmm.
I have.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going back to values. It's just
Hmm.
so important to keep checking in with your values, to keep understanding, does your gut allow that to happen or your gut's churning? Your
Hmm.
guts are churning. It's a really good idea to get out, because you can, when we talk about burnout in the workplace, so much of it has to do with pushing all of your values across the table in the service of ego, ambition, money, financial security. Totally
Hmm.
understandable.
Hmm.
And that's why it's so dangerous, because all of us are susceptible to that. Even if we're entrepreneurs and run our own businesses, we can
Hmm.
fall in love with a client that pays us a lot of money
Right.
and may
Right.
lead us over the cliff. So we have to be very, very careful.
So, Scott, I appreciate you coming on today. My question to you right now will be, where can they find more information about you, about, corporate burnout, this misalignment of leadership,
Sure.
and even understanding who we are as our authentic selves?
Well, the best place to go is doubledareyou.us,
Hmm.
doubledareyou.us. Something I'll send you for the show notes is we just completed a 9-day free training
Okay.
called CEO Breakthrough, and it's
Okay.
for entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs, folks that are considering entrepreneurship. And it's a free 9-day training, and I'll give you a link for the show notes.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Cool, Scott. I thank you very much for coming on the show. But before I let you go, I gotta ask you my would you rather question, right?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
So, so would you rather choose three doors or a fork in the road?
Oh man, fork in the road every time. But I'm a crazy entrepreneur, right? Yeah, I'm always for the fork in the road, because that's just kind of the way, entrepreneurs I think are wired is I
Hmm.
want the next adventure. Adventure, when I think of my own values, adventure is number one. So,
Hmm.
yep, fork in the road.
Nice, nice, nice. I appreciate it. And also, as you talked about being a crazy entrepreneur, I think I listened to a show where you, even though in your bio it said four, but you said something about how you keep going from one company to another, finding this, that, challenging yourself. So yeah, so I hear you and I understand. So if you are listening right now, please listen to Scott on other shows. He was fabulous. So thank you very much, Scott, for coming on to us
Thank you,
today.
Maurice. Real pleasure. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. And continue to listen to That Will Never Work podcast.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?